This is the Evil Never Dies podcast with Brett and Carl. This podcast may contain adult themes, violence, and strong language. Listener discretion is advised.
The Evil Never Dies podcast.
Welcome back to the Evil Never Dies podcast. I'm Brett here with Carl, episode 242.
It took the 242 to finally talk about Motley Crue, I guess.
Yep, you've been wanting to do this for a long time, so
yeah.
And I
It's
guess
probably not what people want to hear because it ain't going to be what they consider Motley Crue probably, but this is what you're going to get, and I'm going to educate you tonight.
education.
A very interesting period in Motley Crue's career that actually to this day still has affected the band. They never really went back. There was a brief time when they sort of went back to being Motley Crue, but this changed everything.
Yep.
So you may start.
Sure, go ahead. It's your show. I'm the co-host tonight.
Okay, so we're going to go back to Decade of Decadence, which came out in 1991. Right?
That's like a compilation album.
It's a compilation. They started if you don't know who Motley Crue is, then I'm not going to tell the story of them. Go watch Netflix The Dirt, I guess. They started in 1981. 1991 was their 10th anniversary, so they put out a cool compilation, and they put some new songs on the compilation. And one was called Primal Scream. Primal Scream was a bit more harsh than Motley Crue had done before and sort of had a different sound to it. And from what we gathered, that was the direction that they were going to head into after Dr. Feelgood, which was their top selling album of all time. 5 million copies sold of Dr. Feelgood. Also a very commercial album. It was, they hired Bob Rock, who was known for working with Bon Jovi and will turn bands into hit machines, and that's sort of what Dr. Feelgood was. There was a lot of big hits on it. So we get Decade of Decadence, which actually I was showing you. This one's actually signed. If you can see any of the signatures on YouTube, there's Tommy's, there's Nicky's right there. There's Mick's, there's Vince's. So Decade of Decadence
that's the CD insert, right?
It's a CD insert, yes.
Okay.
So, 91, this came out. Everybody was pretty excited about what Motley might have up their sleeve. So they had started, let me move this camera a little bit. That's better. Hold on. I want to get this thing fixed. There. That's much better. It was going to fall. No, it won't. So anyway, they were starting to work in the, just kind of putting shit together. They really weren't in the studio yet. And they were having some difficulty with Vince Neil. Vince wasn't wanting to come to the rehearsals. Plus, I guess Vince had sort of fallen off the wagon and was drinking again. This is when Motley Crue were trying to be clean and sober.
Wasn't this after his daughter died too?
No.
His daughter hadn't died yet?
No, not at all.
Okay.
So they were going through the rehearsals. Their manager, Doug, I can't think of his name now. He was sort of like, Vince just ain't into this, and we're gonna try to set something up. So I guess there were some floods in Los Angeles, and they had set up a big rehearsal. Well, Vince didn't show up, so I guess Nicky sent him a fax. What the fuck? A fax.
Oh.
So Vince finally called and said, "Oh, I'm sorry I didn't come. The phone lines were down." And he's like, "I got your fax." And Nicky's like, "How the fuck did you get my fax if the phone line's down, Vince?" "Well, I didn't think we were rehearsing anyway. It's flooding." He's like, "You need to fucking show up, man. We've been here for all day waiting on you. So Vince shows up in a terrible mood, very, very foul mood. Nikki was in a bad mood. So I guess it's not going well. And Vince keeps looking at his watch. And Tommy finally chimes in. He's like, why do you keep looking at your fucking watch? Vince says, well, it's because I hate being here. And Tommy's like, well, why do you hate being here? He says, it's the songs. He said, I don't like the songs we're writing or y'all are writing or Nikki's writing. There's too many keyboards. And Nikki's like, well, we've always had keyboards in our songs. And Vince is like, well, I'm not into this shit. And Nikki's like, well, fine. We'll just go back to having a meeting about getting another lead singer. And Vince is like, well, fuck you. I just quit and left. Now, did Vince intend to quit the band at that point? I don't believe so. I think he was mad.
Did he actually say I quit, or did he just say fuck it, I'm out of here?
Vince says he just said fuck it, I'm out of here, but Nikki says he quit the band at that very moment. Nikki has said that for all these years. Vince said he was not. So anyway, they set up a meeting, the manager with the band, and the band votes unanimously to fire Vince Neil from Motley Crue. So at that point, he was fired. He's gone. And the funny thing is, I guess that same night they got a phone call and said that Vince Neil had gotten into a fight with Robert Patrick, who played the Liquid Terminator in Terminator 2.
Oh.
And tore up a bar. So this attorney's calling Doug, the manager, is like, well, I need this much money from your client because he tore this bar up and we need this for repairs. He's like, well, I have to tell you something. That's not my client anymore. He's no longer in the band as of today. So. And Doug was like, well, he said, I kept telling him this was a mistake, but I actually felt a little bit of relief for the first time. So at that point, let's go back just a few months. Motley had just signed a $25 million contract with Elektra Records. Brand new contract after Dr. Feelgood was such a hit. So the management and the accountants and, Motley had an entire staff were like, we can't do this. We can't let fucking Vince leave. Elektra's going to tear up the fucking contract.
Yeah.
So they told him, we can't talk. We can't say shit. We got to keep this a secret. So okay.
They hid it from the record company, didn't they?
They hid it from the record company. How you like my Slimer cup?
Ooh, Slimer.
Yeah, and I got slime in it too. See that?
Ooh. I'm drinking slime too.
Mine's real slime. All right, back to the story. So life is full of coincidences sometimes, is all I can say. Because you may notice behind me, if you're on YouTube, I have a shirt that says John Corabi on it. Not Count Corabi, John Corabi, who Count Corabi was named after, as I've said before. Apparently, in I think it was Spin Magazine, there was an article and Nikki had commented how much he liked the Scream's debut album and John Corabi. So John Corabi thought it was cool and said, he asked his manager to find Motley's manager, and he just wanted to call and send Nikki a thank you note, for mentioning him, and said maybe try to get him to write a song or something, do a little collaboration since Nikki talked so high of him. So he said when he got the number, and I guess the secretary's like, well, Nikki's gonna want to talk to you. Can I have your number so he can call you back? And Corabi was like, what the fuck? I just, what's this about? He's like, sure. So he didn't think anything of it. The Scream was just ending their tour they were on. The Scream was John was originally from Philadelphia in a band called Angora. He'd moved to Los Angeles and they formed a band called The Scream. They were signed to Hollywood Records and they had a pretty good debut album. It caught a lot of buzz. And they just were ending their tour that night. I think it was in Orange County. So he's getting ready to leave to go play with the Scream. And his wife says, you want to take this call? And he's like, no, I got to go. No, you really want to take this? Gets on the phone. Hi, it's Nikki Sixx. Hey, and Tommy, I'm here too. Tommy Lee. And Corabi's like, well, what the fuck? Well, I appreciate you, writing that, mentioning me in the article. And they're like, no, um, we got to tell you something. And you can't tell a soul. He's like, what? He said, Vince is out of the band and we want you to come rehearse with us, just come jam with us. And Karabi's like, so this is an audition? And they're like, if you want to call it that, just come down, Monday. He said this was a Friday, but you can't tell a soul about Vince. So he's like, okay. So he goes to the damn concert and with the Scream. And I guess he does mention, Nikki called and wants me to come jam with him. And the band was like, holy fuck, you got to do this. This could be huge for us, man. Motley might take us on tour. And Karabi kept his word. He didn't say anything. So the longest weekend ever, he jumps in his Ford Taurus, shows up at the rehearsals place, and he's like nervous as shit. He walked in the room, and there they were. He said it looked like a guitar center with all the equipment they had in this room. It was just, guitars and basses everywhere. And he told the band he was so nervous that he almost walked in naked. And they're like, oh, that would have been funny. You should have done that. And he's like, well, I'm a little nervous here. Well, side note to this, John Corabi had been in a lot of cover bands in Philly, but he'd never played a Motley Crue song in his life. He didn't even know any Motley Crue songs. He'd never even listened to Motley. I guess he, the radio hits. He knew Home Sweet Home. I think he knew they did Smoking in the Boys' Room and Helter Skelter, some of the covers. So they're like, well, what do you want to do? I think it was Helter Skelter, or it might have been Smoking in the Boys' Room. They started jamming, and Tommy started screaming, no, no, no. And Karabi's like, oh, fuck, they're kicking me out. Like, what's the problem? They said, he's too loud. You need to turn the mic down. And they turned it down, and no, he's still too loud. Turn the mic down. And Tommy started laughing. He said, your voice is like 50 times stronger than Vince's. This is just too cool. So he's like, oh, okay. So they go back to jamming, and he said they never finished a complete song. So they said, it ended, and they're like, well, that was fun. Why don't you come back tomorrow? We're going to audition a few more people. And he's like, okay, I'll come back. And he left, and he's like, boy, I fucked that up bad. It's told his wife, he's like, yeah, I'm not that wouldn't go well.
Yeah, I ain't got a chance in the world.
I ain't got a chance in the world for this, I don't even think I'll get Nikki to write one of our songs, for the Scream's new album. So next day comes, he shows back up, and the managers are there, and the accountants, and all the business suits, and he says they're telling him shit. He has no idea what they're talking about in legal jumbo, and keeps saying, you can't say anything about this, and blah, blah, blah. And, you weren't here. You're not here. He's like, what do you mean I'm not here? If anybody says that you've never even met these guys. And he's like, what the fuck? So I guess after all this, he tells Nikki and Tommy and Mickey's like, well, it's, I've only been here 45 minutes. Are we going to get the jam? And they're like, yeah, we'll jam. So this time they gave some lyrics to some of the Motley songs. I think Wild Side, Dr. Feelgood, and they jam out. At one point they find out he can play guitar, and Mick's like, you can play guitar. So they were having like little duels and playing blues and shit. And then he said Tommy just got up and left the room, and Nikki left the room, and Mick got a cigarette and left. And he's like, oh shit, I've really pissed him off this time. So he said, he just sit there and he just smokes him a cigarette. They come back in the room, and they said, well, John, you're in. You're our new singer. And he was like, huh? They're like, yeah, you're it, man. He said, we've heard enough. We want you. You're it. You're the new singer of Motley Crue. And let me find I sent you this quote last night. I'm going to find it. I got to find it.
Yeah,
Quote, John Corabi, I thought there was no fucking way that I would get this gig. I didn't know anything about the band. As I said, I was just hoping for an opportunity to possibly write a song with them for their next record or my next record or both. And he's in. John Corabi is the new singer of Motley Crue. Just like that.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And he never even expected it.
No, he didn't even know anything about the Crue. He didn't know, he was not a fan. He was an Aerosmith fan.
Yeah. Well, he's from the East Coast, so
Tyler was his hero. Steven
yeah.
Tyler was his hero. That's who he grew up idolizing, and that's who he wanted, it's kind of how he dressed even to this day,
Yeah,
30 years later. That was
exactly.
30 years ago. That was actually 31 years ago in 1992 when all this occurred. So you can't say shit. We haven't issued a press release, so don't say a word. So I guess him and the Scream had like a radio interview, and he went to it, didn't say a word. It was what's the LA radio station?
KNAC.
Yep. And I guess again, there's no way that he's lying about this shit because he's been telling this story for 30 years. In the studio, they hand the DJ, I think Long John. You remember that guy?
Sounds familiar, yeah.
He ended up being on Z-Rock. They hand him a paper. He's like, "Oh my God, this is breaking news. Motley Crue and Vince Neil have parted ways." And they're like, "Holy shit." And he said he looked around and the Scream band were just staring at him like,
Oh,
and they went off the radio. They said, "So what the fuck, man? What the fuck?" Yeah, he's like, I don't know anything. So he's like, "Shit."
he's playing dumb.
Yeah. So anyway, it got leaked. How did it go then? I guess yeah, the Scream's pretty pissed at him. And they finally like, yeah, you're the new singer. We've heard the rumors about it, it's everywhere. So it broke. They decided they were going to lock themselves in a studio and hire Bob Rock, who directed, I can't even talk, produced Dr. Feelgood and would produce the Black Album for Metallica, which
Yeah.
was, how massive that was. And they were going to lock themselves away in the studio for months and write this epic album. In the meantime, let's go back to Vince Neil. Vince goes on MTV and he's like, "Yeah, man, Nikki says that I quit, but I say that I'm fired. But either way, it is what it is. It sucks. It's a bummer, and I don't really want to be out of the Crue. But I'm just gonna live my life. And he says I'm gonna work on a song for a soundtrack. He's who was it he was playing with? Who was the guy from Night Ranger? Come on,
Brad
Brett.
Gillis.
No, the
Guitarist.
singer. Yeah, no, the singer.
Oh, Blades. Jack
Yeah,
Blades.
Jack Blades, and they were gonna go in the studio and do a song for Encino Man. So he's like, yeah, he said, I wasn't into the music they were writing. It's all this keyboard, orchestra shit. And I want to make an album that sounds like Motley meets Metallica. I want it to be heavy as shit, just full on metal. And Vince is like, yeah, I'm just looking forward to the future. And I wish the guys no ill. And, I wish it hadn't happened, but, it's all cool, man. And Vince was he took it just great. He looked like a good guy on MTV and everybody was excited. Like, wow, Vince is going to be the new David Lee Roth here. He's going to put out this cool ass album. It's going to blow up and be a big hit. So in the meantime, John Corabi has to find a way how to get out of his contract with Hollywood Records and the Scream. And one of the suggestion was that the Scream were going to continue on, and Corabi was going to record one last song with him, and it was the song "Young and Dumb." I don't know if you remember. That's a cover. It was a real silly song.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah.
Corabi said he always hated that song, so they recorded it, and I guess he was free of Hollywood Records. But guess what soundtrack that came out on? Encino Man with Vince Neil's "You're Invited, but Your Friend Can't Come." Now, how's that for a coincidence?
That's funny.
So, anyway, long story short, Vince puts out his first solo album. It sounds nothing like Metallica. It sounds like 80s Motley Crue. Sister of Pain was the single. Nobody cared. It didn't sell shit. It was just he didn't become the new Ozzy. He didn't become the new David Lee Roth. It just sort of fell into oblivion.
Fizzled.
In the
Fizzled out.
It fizzled out. In the meantime, Motley's still working on their album, which was going to be called "Till Death Do Us Part." They all got matching tattoos, and this brings us to our topic. After all this talk,
Our
it's the Motley
topic.
Crue 1994 self-titled album.
Yes, it is.
Which, before we start, Nikki and Tommy wanted to change the name of the band, and Elektra Records refused.
Really?
They did not want to call this a Motley Crue album. They wanted to call it something else.
Huh.
They
No
were very
idea.
adamant. We did not want this to be a Motley record, but Elektra Flat said no. You know, y'all signed this contract. Y'all fired y'all's lead singer. Y'all going to own up to this shit. And they did. So Motley Crue, self-titled album. I'll let you do your stats, and then I'll go to blabbing again.
All right. It was recorded, like you said, from 1992 through 1993 at A&M Studios, Hollywood, Little Mountain Studios in Vancouver, Canada.
And guess what I managed to have?
What's
a videotape of the entire recording session.
Really?
It's about 4 hours long.
Really?
Dude, I was in the know back then, man.
No,
I got
shit.
this. It was sort of, remember when Metallica recorded the Black Album and they did the whole taped the whole thing?
Yeah.
Same thing. Because Bob Rock even says, do I really got to sit through another fucking video camera in my face while I produce? And they're like, yeah. So, of course,
the record company wanted this done.
no, Tommy and Nikki and Nick,
Okay.
I guess, they wanted to record it. So
All right.
I've got it. It's actually on YouTube now too.
Huh.
It's unless you really like John Corabi, it's probably pretty boring to most people, but it's fun to watch how this thing progressed. So,
all right. Under the genre, they got hard rock, alternative metal, grunge.
that album is not a fucking grunge album.
And industrial rock.
There's nothing industrial on the album.
Or alternative, really. Length is what?
I would call it just hard rock.
Yep. That's what I would call it too. It's not metal for sure.
There's a few metal-esque tracks on it.
Yeah. But overall. Okay, length is 60 minutes and 23 seconds. Label is Elektra Records. Like you said, produced by Bob Rock and Motley Crue. Let's see here. And it was released on March 15th, 1994.
And I remember the moment it came out, I had it.
Were you one of them waiting at the record store?
Well, there really wasn't a wait.
Oh, yeah.
There really wasn't a wait.
Now, some people used to like hang out at fucking Tower Records or whatever. They'd be there at midnight. And
we did that for a Metallica release. Bob and I taped it and put it on our show on cable access. But unfortunately for Motley 94, there wasn't no big line. They did do something sort of cool. They put out a yellow copy and a red copy. So, of course, my dumb ass bought both of them.
At the same time?
Of course. I wanted them both. Because the liners were different. There was different stuff in them.
Yeah. Well, you know
they
what?
They got in trouble.
That does not surprise me one bit at all, Carl.
Well, they did get in trouble because there was one picture of Nikki wearing a Nazi outfit.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. I don't know how it made it through, but anyway. So, yeah, there were two different versions.
I bet that's off of there now and the ones they print now.
And there's the back. The backs were the same on all of them.
Cool. All right, let's go over the band. First off, like you said, we got John Corabi on
Don't fuck up his name, you bitch.
Lead vocals, acoustic guitar, rhythm guitar, and 6-string bass. So he played bass on this album too?
Some bass, yeah. Corabi played about everything on it. Or not, he didn't play everything. He participated in everything.
Well, you know, the thing now is that Nicky don't play the bass, so
Well, that's the thing now, but
I was just
Nicky did
wondering.
play the bass on this album. I've
Oh,
got the recording sessions, and yeah, he's playing the bass on it.
okay.
Straight up. I saw it firsthand. Well,
Next, we got
secondhand.
Mick Mars on lead guitar,
Stop.
6-string bass, sitar, mandolin, and backing vocals.
Yes, he
Are you
is.
sure Nicky plays on this album?
I can show you the video. He's going to boom, 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 boom on that bass.
All right, Nicky Six on bass, guitar, piano, and backing vocals, and Tommy Lee on drums, piano, and backing vocals. And guest musicians,
Glenn
we got
Hughes.
Glenn Hughes backing vocals on the song Misunderstood, Scott Humphrey programming and synthesizers,
Who would later become their producer for subsequent albums.
Mark LaFrance and David Steele backing vocals.
David Steele.
Yep.
My friend David Steele.
I don't know. Was he out there
I don't
recording
know. He
some
disappeared in
Metallica?
92 for a few months.
Hook Herrera on harmonica, Sammy Sanchez on mandolin, and members of the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, and Akira Nagai was the conductor for that.
So Vince said he didn't like it because there was orchestras and keyboards. So I guess Vince wasn't lying.
Yep.
Now, I've never heard this repeated in the modern day, but back in the 90s, now back then the internet wasn't a thing, at least for me. I was on all these bulletin boards, BBSs. If you're old, you remember them. If you're computer nerd, you remember them. And I got a lot of inside scoop from people. And the inside scoop I heard was that the song Misunderstood is what got Vince fired, that he could not sing the song. And that was part of led to them get into their big fight. Now, nobody has said that again, but that's what I was hearing back then, that the song Misunderstood was that Vince could not sing it. And that led to his downfall. I don't know. That was then. This is now. I've got books, I've got videotapes, and I've never heard that story again. But I've always wondered if there might have been some truth to it, because Vince was saying symphonies, keyboards. The song has all of those, so
Yep.
makes you wonder.
All right, the production team. We got Bob Rock, producer, mixing, acoustic guitar, rhythm guitar, and mandolin.
Yeah, Bob always played on the albums he produced.
Randy Staub, engineer and mixing. George Marino, mastering. And Bob Buckley, orchestral arrangements and conduction, along with the Akira Nagai. And that is the band and production.
And Nicky played bass.
And Nicky
Apparently
played bass.
John played some bass too. John played a lot on this album, a lot of guitar.
Yep.
Mick liked it. Mick was enjoying somebody playing rhythm and him getting to worry about the leads.
Yeah, he didn't have to worry about the rhythm section and
Right.
both doing both. So
Well, Mick said that he never could do a lot on the Motley records because he couldn't reproduce it live if he did a bunch of fancy rhythms. And then, so
exactly.
having Corabi in the band was huge for Mick. He loved it. They all love Corabi. I mean, they worshiped the guy there for the couple years. They were buying him shit. It was really unfair for them to put John Corabi in the position he was in. And Steven Tyler, funny story I'll tell real quick. Motley told Corabi, hey, there's a brand new band in the studio next to us, and they want to meet you because you're our new singer. He's like, okay. So he goes in there and he looks and he's like, that looks like Joe Perry. Well, somebody comes up from behind him and grabs his face and says, hi. Well, it's Steven Tyler. So he lost his shit. That's his hero. And Steven Tyler told him, he said, Mr. John Corabi, you're about to be fired out of a cannon full force. So you better be ready for the ride. And damned if he wasn't telling the truth, because
yeah. Yep.
You know, Corabi was in the Scream. The Scream was not a huge band. Corabi was living, you know, in a just a pretty
Modestly, very
modest, low income ish for
driving a
LA. You know,
Taurus.
yeah, driving a Taurus. You know, with he had a wife and two kids. I think he had a stepdaughter and his son, and he was actually working another job while he was, you know, when the Scream wasn't on tour. So you go to that to running around with these millionaires that just, you know, they were like driving different cars every day, and it was just it was overwhelming for the guy.
Yeah, sort of like culture shock for
It
sure.
was yes, um, yeah, it was sort of unfair. I mean, they were cool to him.
Yeah,
They were buying him shit, but
he just got thrown into it and he didn't know what the hell was going on.
he didn't know what the hell was going on. Except everything he did, they praised. They're like, man, you're so much better than Vince. You know, you can play guitar, you can write songs, you can. He was just totally thrown on a pedestal and told how great he was at that time.
Yep. All right, let's go over the charts and certifications here.
You want to do the track list first?
Just
Yeah, track list first.
track list. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to do charts yet. That's a long story.
Okay.
We got a long way to go till we get there.
Okay.
Let's do the tracks.
All right. Track list for Motley Crue, self-titled.
Which we now call Motley Crue 94, I think. At least
Okay.
I do.
Okay. Track 1, Power to the Music. And what's your thoughts on that song?
It's a good introduction because you hear right away this ain't Vince Neil.
Yep.
You know, John's voice is totally different than Vince's in every conceivable way. He can't hit the higher notes that Vince hit, you know, about when Vince could fucking sing, but he had such a power and a masculine voice compared to Vince. And Power to the
Exactly.
Music, you know, it starts out, there's just this line where it's just Corabi singing, and then it goes into the drums. It's a good intro to the song.
All right.
So, good song.
Track 2, Uncle Jack.
So, Corabi wrote that about his uncle who was a child molester.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's a lot to that story. He wanted to call it, I think, the Ballad of Uncle Jack, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, they're like, you can't name this song after this guy. You know, you get sued and shit. So it just became Uncle Jack. So this is a Corabi song. It was all about his child molesting uncle.
Huh.
And cool thing about it, they did some kind of a thing where the proceeds from anything of that song they were going to send to like a child abuse or, you know, exploitation network or something. I don't know that it ever happened, but they were going to do that. I
That's
think they
cool.
planned on making this a single at one point.
Huh. All right. Track 3, we got Hooligans Holiday. And that was their first single off the album.
That was the first single, and I don't think it should have been the first single. Hooligan's Holiday is sort of a weird song. If anything sounded grungy on the album, it was probably this track.
Exactly.
I don't know why they decided to go with this. There were so much better songs, and I'm not saying I don't like Hooligan's Holiday. It's just it's not the best song on the album, and it's not a good introduction to John Corabi. So I think they could have chose a better song.
Well, even Pearl Jam and like Soundgarden said it sounded grungy.
It did.
So yeah.
It's the only song on the album that does, honestly, to me.
All right, next we got track number 4, which is Misunderstood, and that was their second single off the album.
And that is probably, besides Home Sweet Home, the best song Motley Crue has ever recorded, period, ever, in my opinion. And I have been listening to Motley Crue since Shout at the Devil. And that is my opinion, and I will always say that, and I'll always believe that. Misunderstood is one of the darker songs that Nikki Sixx wrote. And that was in his heart. That is the stuff Nikki always wanted to write, I believe. But he had to write songs for a certain blonde-haired singer. You know, all the trashy, whatever shit. He got a chance to really open up the doors to the real Nikki Sixx, and it shines on this song. And motherfucking, it should have been a #1 hit, and it wasn't, and it still makes me mad to this day. The video is phenomenal. It's a really cool video. MTV didn't want to play it. Well, there's other reasons, but they said since it was a suicide song, they didn't want to play it on MTV, so it kind of got shut down there.
Yeah.
There was other reasons. We'll get into that later. There was an interview on MTV that went south.
Okay.
But I love Misunderstood. It's a classic, and if you've never heard this album, you need to at least listen to this one song. Do it for me.
Alrighty, track 5, we got Love Shine.
And that's the complete opposite. I don't really know what the hell this song's even doing on the album. It's a Beatles sounding song that
Yep.
Corabi loved the Beatles. He was a hippie, man. He's still a hippie. So I don't know. There were better songs that they recorded that they could have put on the album. Actually, there's an entire EP that was released we'll get into later that had extra songs. I didn't like Love Shines. It didn't fit the album.
Yeah. There's a couple of songs on here that you can tell that they're influenced by the Beatles and Zeppelin.
Well, especially Corabi. The Beatles was his thing. The Beatles and Aerosmith.
Right, track 6, we got Poison Apples.
It's a good song.
Yep.
Pretty heavy beat to it. Very
Tracks-
Tommy Lee drummy.
Yeah.
You can hear Tommy. That's one thing about this album. You can tell it's a Motley Crue album just based on Tommy's drums, because it sounds like Tommy fucking Lee drumming.
Exactly. Track 7, we got Hammered.
I love Hammered.
Didn't you send me the lyrics to this?
I did sing you the lyrics. Who the fuck do you think you are? A rich motherfucker in a fancy car.
Track 8.
I swear, they wrote that song about Vince.
Yeah.
And the one line it says, "Time will tell, see who fades away." So at that point, they'd wrote Vince off as never going to exist again, but oh well.
Track 8, we got Till Death Do Us Part, which was going to be originally the name of the album.
It should have been the name of the album, and it should have been the first single. Because I think that's probably about the second or third best song on the album. Again, dark as fuck. It is dark fucking shit on this song, and it's Nikki. I lived and died in my songs. Some of the lyrics are all dark shit, and this is what Nikki Sixx should have been writing his whole career. Should have been the first single. Would it have made a difference? It could have. I don't know. I love the song.
All right, track 9, we got Welcome to the Numb.
Another good song.
That's more about Nikki's drug abuse, I think.
It is. It's another heavier song. I mean, I don't know that, like you said, it depends on what you consider heavy metal. This is a pretty heavy song. Again, Tommy just knocks it out of the park with the drums on this whole album. And, the dual guitars are great. It's good stuff, man. Except for Love Shines. That song should have went away.
All right, track 10, Smoke the Sky. And on this one, I really hear a Zeppelin.
It's Zeppelin-y. It is very Zeppelin-y. And Nikki, was a lot of influence of Led Zeppelin too. So Smoke the Sky is a pretty heavy song too.
Next, we got track 11 with Dropping Like Flies.
Yeah, that's just basically talking about the world and the LA riots and everything that was going on, in the early 90s.
Track 12, Drift Away.
Ballad, great ballad, very deep, very depressing again. Mistakes I make tell me the roads I shouldn't choose. Never comes that easy when you have nothing left to lose. Love the lyrics, man. Between Corabi and Nikki, them two were fucking geniuses together, man. It's genius shit, man. Coming from a band that wrote some of the silliest songs ever, just go listen to fucking Theater of Pain. My God, Even they hate that. Every member of Motley Crue hates Theater of Pain. The only song on there any good's Home Sweet Home, and the rest of the album is shit.
And then in 2003, they remastered it and did 3 bonus tracks on here,
Well, they already had those bonus tracks.
but they threw them in on here.
I don't even know which ones got thrown on.
13 Hypnotized, and it was the B side of oh, fucking lost my spot here. Hooligan's Holiday. And
Oh,
then
you mean
Baby Kill.
this? Yeah, I have the single. Motley Crue Hooligans Holidays, the single. It was a limited edition. I had 5,670.
I don't know shit.
Yep.
Out
So
of
yeah,
how many?
Hypnotized is on the
Out of probably
Hooligans Holiday,
10,000.
along with the Brown Nose edit, the extended holiday version, and the lyric version. One of those, I think Mud Puppy actually goes in there and industrializes the shit out of the song for him. Pretty cool. Then we also had the Misunderstood single that came out.
Oh, cool. Track
Back
14, Baby Kills, which was from the
from Coordinary.
Quordinary EP.
Yeah. Coordinary.
Quordinary.
Whatever it's called.
And track 15, Living in the Know, and it was also off the Quordinary EP.
So, what else you got?
That's all I got for
That's all the others. So, let's talk about this Quordinary or whatever. They had extra songs, so move they made a ticket came with the album, with the Motley Crue album, that you could send in and get this Quordinary for shipping and handling for free. So, of course, I got it. It had 5 songs on it. Planet Boom, which was a Tommy Lee song. It's Tommy singing on it.
Oh, really?
Bittersweet, which was Mick's song. Mick wrote that one. It's just like a blues ballad. A song called Father, which Nicky wrote and supposedly sung on it. I have no idea. It was not a good song. Corabi wrote one called Friends, which is sort of beboppy weird. It wasn't a very good song. And track 5 was Baby Kills. Well, guess what they did? They decided they were going to release a different version of it in Japan.
The Nippon version, or whatever the hell they call it.
Well, guess what? There it is right there. I got 2 versions of this. And this is the good version. It has track 6, which was 10,000 Miles Away, which is a ballad that if they had released that song about 2 years earlier, it would have been a #1 hit on Billboard. Great song. Corabi's voice is good on it. We got a extended holiday version of Hooligan's Holiday on it, the demo of Hammered, and a demo of Living in the Know. So that's the Quordinary EP. We got both of them. We got the US version. We got the Japanese version. So they gave us a little bonus, I think, for waiting so long for this album. And, the whole lead singer change. They were trying to. Now, I noticed these things got numbers on them. This one was 61,664. So I think they only printed like 20,000 of these things. So the Japanese, it's WPCR 76. I don't know how many of these put out, but I'm guessing these are pretty rare. I have no idea. So we had the.
So they were both mail-in deals?
I don't know how I got a hold of the Japanese version. I must have used some of my contacts within the
realms of the internet of Motley Crue
to get that. But yeah, here's actually the Japanese writing in that one. It came with a special book.
Huh.
So I think that covers everything that got released from the recording session, the EP, the album, the singles. Only 2 singles got released. The reason why? It didn't sell that well. Before you go over the charts you wanted to, I will go ahead and say I think this debuted at #7 on Billboard.
Yep, you got
which
that
was
right.
they were happy about that, and their manager called them and said, "I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is the album came in at 7, so we're going to consider that a win. The bad news is every executive over at Elektra Records just got fired. Everybody. So they're bringing in a
Fired
whole
for
new
what?
management team
Fired for putting out this album?
for making bad deals. Not only did they give
Mm,
Motley the $25 million contract, there was, I want to say like Anita Baker and a couple R&B artists, and I can't think of, I don't know offhand. They gave a bunch of huge deals out, and none of them were paying off. So Warner Brothers, who owned Elektra, fired them all.
really?
And the lady that took over Elektra Records is like, yeah, I'm not going to push this fucking Motley Crue. We're not going to give them any kind of publicity for their tour. So this
Hmm.
was, the album came out, the tour hadn't started. The tour got delayed because, Nikki, I think, was having a baby and wanted to wait. So the tour wasn't going to get going till June. So once they got on tour, they had absolute none of publicity or, anything for this from Elektra. They pulled everything from them.
Huh.
So you can go do your charts now. Sorry, I
Well,
interfered.
like you said, 7 on Billboard, 17 in the UK, and it went gold in the US.
It did go
So,
gold, 50,000 or 500,000.
yep, and it went gold in Japan also with 100,000 sold. So not too shabby.
Not too shabby, but when you sold 5 million copies before,
Yeah.
it's considered a loss.
Yeah. Well,
Now,
yeah, definitely.
why
Mm.
was it now the tour, like I said, if you watch the dirt makes it appear like they were going around playing these clubs in front of 25 people. That wasn't the case. There were playing in some cases, I think Mexico, they played in front of like 25,000 fans. Um, in Dallas, I can tell all kinds of stories about the Dallas show. Starplex was full for that. Of course, it was a KEGL sponsored event. The tickets were $9.71, 97.1. But uh, I'm not saying that them firing Vince Neil caused the tour to go bad, but they said they were going to Atlanta. Last time, Dr. Feelgood, they were at the Omni, sold completely out. This time, they got booked at a smaller venue. They got to Georgia, found out they got booked into an even smaller venue. And Nikki's like, what the hell? And they, the manager, Doug, said that he come across some kid who was wearing a Motley Crue shirt. He says, "Oh, are you going to the show tomorrow?" "What show?" "Motley's in town." "Motley Crue's in town?" Nobody said anything. Didn't get any publicity. Nobody
Nope.
had any idea they were on tour. This was before the
Really,
internet.
not even the local rock station was promoting.
Apparently not. Apparently not, unless you had a station like KEGL that openly promoted rock and
Well,
metal.
that's on Elektra Records then, because they're
I
the one.
told you, Elektra pulled everything once they fired the front office. So this tour was a financial failure, and they lost money on it to the
Wow.
point where they weren't taking their salaries and stuff from it, and it was a failure. The tour was a failure. But if you watch that stupid Dirt movie, it makes it look like that they were playing in high schools in front of nobody. That's not how this tour went. It was doomed thanks to record label. It was doomed thanks to the change in the music environment and probably the change in lead singer to a bit, although Vince had less success.
Yeah.
Vince was actually touring with I think Van Halen. I think he was opening for Van Halen. But they can't nobody tell me that Vince being fired from Motley Crue caused this album to flop. It
No.
was honestly, if they had released this album under the name Audio Slave, I think it would have been a bigger hit. If Elektra Records hadn't have pulled all the publicity, it would have been a bigger hit. But it wasn't. It was not a big. The tour was a failure, and it only sold 500,000 copies and went gold. But that's how it went. All the reviews on it were all positive. Everybody liked it. Everybody liked the change, except for a lot of the old Crue fans. But by then, they weren't going to shows by anyway, or they'd turn into Nirvana fans.
Yeah, grunge also fucking killed it. That was the big thing in '94.
If it killed it, it was because it was called Motley Crue, and nobody wanted nothing to do with the '80s. Like I said, if they'd have called it In Search
Anything.
Of, it
Yeah.
might have been, I think the name Motley Crue killed it. Now the tour, they had I think it was King's X and Typo Negative. Nikki brought them out, and that was their first big tour. And I was at the Dallas show. It was a fucking blast. I had that best time of any show in my life, I think, at that Corabi Motley Crue concert. They only played certain Crue songs that sort of fit John. It was more the heavier songs. It was a great show. The KEGL, when they had Stuttering John from the Howard Stern Show's band opening as well, since it was a radio, sponsored event.
Yeah. It's funny.
And when they were in town, they got to hang out with or John got to hang out with Diamond Vinny and experience that craziness a bit. So, but nevertheless, the album was not a financial success, and the tour lost a lot of money. So, at the end of the day, about the money, it didn't work out that way. But there was no talk of quitting. They were gonna gear up and go back in the studio and crank it out again. There was no talk of no. Everything was like, yeah, let's get in the studio and we're gonna do it again.
And wasn't the next album that was
Well, we'll get there in a minute. So let's stick
Okay.
with the '94 album.
Okay.
What else we want to cover on the actual album itself?
I don't know. Whatever you got, man. I got nothing else. It's all you, brother.
I think we covered the album. It's more or less the story of and the story after. I think that's more alluring than the album itself. The album itself is brilliant. It's definitely a 5-star album in my opinion. 5 stars straight. It's hard for me to say that it's better than Shout at the Devil, but those are my 2 favorite Crue albums, honestly, without any doubt. So I can say nothing about this album bad. I think they should have took that baby, maybe not the Baby Kills, the Love Shines Off, and put maybe that 10,000 Miles song on. They could have flipped around the set list, put out a better lead-off single. But I love the album to this day. It introduced me to John Corabi 30 years. This album came out 30 years ago too. So this is one reason why I finally brought it out of the relics or whatever.
30 years ago, almost to the day, dude.
Yeah.
March 15th. So
yeah,
picked a good time to do this album.
I was gonna do it. I was gonna mention it the week of it, but we were in Leprechaun world. So yeah, I have nothing bad to say about the album. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. It always has been. Like I said, it introduced me to John Corabi, who I've been following his career to this very day. Motley, that's a whole different story.
But yeah, we all know about that.
So what is your thoughts on the album? I would love to hear your comments and your thoughts.
Well,
honestly. Now I will say before you start, a lot of people say this sounds more like a heavy Aerosmith album than a Motley album.
Well, I don't think that.
Yeah.
His vocals are fucking awesome on here. And everybody, I feel that this was actually the first time I actually listened to this whole album all the way through.
They recorded it more or less like live and jam sessions too.
So
it's sort of
I believe everybody came into their own. I feel because John was doing the rhythm guitar, that Mick was actually able to concentrate on his lead stuff, some awesome lead guitar in this for sure. And Tommy's drumming was awesome on here.
Definitely.
Sort of different. Everybody, I think, was sort of different than previous albums for sure. I think John brought them all together and actually brought all their talent together.
That's a good way of putting it.
Is what I feel. There's a couple of songs on there I'm not too like that one, the Shine song or whatever.
Love Shine. That song didn't fit the album.
But you can definitely tell very blues based for sure. Definitely not a heavy metal album. Hard rock for sure. You can definitely hear that Beatles, Zeppelin, even a little bit of Aerosmith in there, you know.
You can't have Corabi without a little bit of Aerosmith, I don't think.
So I like it, you know, for the first time I actually listened to the whole thing all the way through. Because, you know, I was sort of one of them back in the day. You know, Vince ain't on the album, you know. It's probably shit, you know.
Most people thought that way, but
And
everybody I've ever got to listen to this album have liked it, honestly. Anybody that ever, George Call, he was like, man, you always talking about that album. I said, give it a listen. And he told me he said, that's the best Crue album I ever heard. So people give it a chance. They usually liked it or liked it in past tense.
yeah,
I
but
mean, 30
anyway,
years later, it's still talked about.
anyway, I'm gonna give it a 4.5 for sure.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, I like it. I like the sound of it. It's very different, Motley Crue. And I wish they would have never brought Vince back.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We can get into the part 2. I don't know if you want to do it on this episode or go
Sure,
into it
let's go
together.
for it, man, while we're here.
Okay,
While
let's go into it. So
while it's fresh in our head.
they go to Japan and then finish up, I guess, some more tour dates. And that was, I think that's when somewhere along the line, Corabi told Nikki, he's like, you know, Nikki, I don't care if this album sells 3 copies or 3 million. It's a badass album. And Nikki got mad. He's like, well, that's a shitty attitude to have, John. We need this album to sell. We need this to be a big hit. I don't like your attitude. And he's like, oh, well, sorry, dude. You know, I wasn't trying to piss you off. So then I guess in Japan, they said, well, we noticed you're not like moving around the stage like Vince did. This wasn't Motley. This was the management people or the tour manager.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I can. I'm playing guitar. They said, well, why don't you on a few of the old Vince songs not play guitar? So he started questioning. John was like, well, maybe I'm not doing something right. So that's when things started to get a little bit, you know, it wasn't the perfect marriage now. There were starting to be a little bit of kinks in the closet. So they got back.
That always happens when management gets involved.
True. They got back. I think they all got divorced. At one point, John was living in Mick Mars' guest house, which was up on a hill in Hollywood. Nikki had bought like a bunch of like a motorcycle for Corabi. It just all kinds of crazy stuff. And they were going back in the studio. They weren't going to use Bob Rock this time. What that Scott Humphreys, is that his name?
Yeah, yeah.
So they were writing the album and it was going to be called Personality Number 9. This was by 97, 96. It was a few years later. So they're in the studio putting some stuff together. And again, there's starting to be issues. And things just don't seem right, Corabi said, you know, and Mick wasn't around. They kept saying, John, we need you to come back into the studio and record some guitar parts. And he's like, well, where's Mick? They said, oh, Mick's fine with this. He wants you to do it. So he was recording all this guitar stuff for the new album. Mick wasn't around. So he said everything just felt off. So there was a big meeting and they said, okay, you know, basically Elektra Records and everybody's decided that, you know, they want Vince back. So he's coming back. And that's it. So Corabi's like, well, I guess I'll get my shit and go. They're like, no, 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 don't do that. It's nothing like that. You just keep hanging out here with us, and you know, things are gonna work out. And he's like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, we're talking about making you the rhythm guitar player and staying in the band. And he's like, what? So just weird stuff. Nick's still not around. So then they're like, hey, John, can you like stay around and help Vince like learn these songs? And he's like,
So
yeah,
they wanted to
sure.
use. So they wanted to use him more or less.
They
Then
wanted to use him more or less. So he's like, it was weird, but he said Vince was cool to him. Vince is like, say, man, I know this is awkward, but we got to do what we got to do, I guess. So Vince was back. It was a big secret again. Although I was hearing some ramblings that things weren't working out. Well, finally, I guess Mick calls John on the phone. He's like, the hell are you doing recording my guitar parts? He's like, dude, they told me you knew about it. He's like, I didn't know shit, but I hear they're going to fire me and hire you. So congratulations for stealing my job. And he's like, what? He's like, what the hell are you talking about? So it just completely starts to crumble from there. And
well, what was Mick dealing with his health problems during
no,
this, or
no,
he was just taking a break, or
I think, what just recently happened in the last year? They fired Mick
yeah,
out of the band. I think Nikki wanted Mick out of the band. They tried to fire him in the 80s, and somebody talked him out of it. I think it was Dana Strum from Slaughter or something that talked him out of it. I think they were trying to get rid of Mick Mars, and I think they were cool with Corabi staying around, but they had to bring Vince back to please Elektra Records and to please the stupid ass Motley Crue fans. So I think they were sort of settled with letting Mick go and keep Corabi as guitar player. So finally, Corabi just quit going to the studio, and that was pretty much the end of the story. The album, he wrote most of the album. He's actually on the album as far as he's got some background vocals and stuff. So he said he was with a friend or somebody, and they said, hey, look, Motley Crue's new album's out. And he's like, nobody told me. Generation Swine. And he said he opened it up and looked at the notes, and he is given credit for one song. And that's it. It was said it was written by Six, Lee, Mars, Corabi, and Neil. And he's like, this is some bullshit. There's no mention of his name on it. There's nothing.
Wow.
So eventually that would lead to a lawsuit because he got fucked out of his royalties. Although that album didn't sell, so there wasn't a whole lot of royalties to it.
Yeah, but still, fuck.
Yeah, this isn't a review of Generation Swine. I personally sort of like the album a lot. It's different. It did not bring Motley Crue back into the it sells less than Motley Crue 94. So bringing Vince back did not fix anything.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
By the end of it, Tommy would end up quitting because he didn't like Vince. Mick was always unhappy, I think, that Vince was back. So
and they tried to
they
fuck
had
him.
kept John Corabi on Personality number 9 / Generation Swine and put it out and kept going, I think they would have blown up on maybe the next album after that. As we got further, closer to the end of the 90s into the 2000s when all the metal bands were making their comebacks.
Yeah.
I think they would have blown up and been the biggest band in the world again with Corabi. But we never got the chance to see. Money talked. They would end up eventually putting up without Tommy that stupid album called New Tattoo, which is an absolute filth album. It's absolutely terrible. It's worse than
who'd they get for a drummer on that? Wasn't that
Randy Castillo actually from
okay.
Ozzy? He was playing with I think Vince and his solo band, so he was sort of on the radar and he wasn't with Ozzy anymore. But New Tattoo it sounds like one of those late 80s, early 90s glam rock albums. It's terrible. So they messed up bad by not keeping John Corabi. I think to this day.
I feel the same way, man. He's so talented, got a killer voice. He's a good, awesome guitar player. seems like a
remember
real easygoing guy, you know.
he is an easygoing guy. Um, when the Generation Swine came out, they had a listening party at the Bronco Bowl, and I was there, and it was fun. I mean, I was mad Corabi was gone, but I wasn't necessarily mad that Vince had come back either. It was sort of a, you know, they
Mixed
still sound
feelings.
modern. It's not going back to the 80s, but Nikki hooked John up with Bruce Kulick from Kiss, who had recently been fired from Kiss because of the reunion tour when they brought Ace and Peter back, and they would form the band called Union. So Corabi and Bruce, out of both of them's being fired, formed a really cool band. And John would end up, oddly enough, for 10 years playing rhythm guitar and Rat. They asked him to be the lead singer, and he's like, fuck you. I will not be the lead singer of another 80s band. He said, but I'll play guitar for you. He said him and Warren DeMartini were buddies. He's like, I'll come play with you, dude. So he did.
Huh.
And he sort of faded into oblivion, and it was sort of sad for me to see John Corabi playing rhythm guitar for Rat, as talented as the guy was,
Yeah.
He should have been in a big band, I thought. Funny story. They're opening for Vince Neil. Well, Vince is trashed. So they actually tell Corabi, hey, do you remember any of those Crue songs? He's like, yeah. Well, can you go out and finish this show? He's like, sure. So he's out there singing Motley Crue songs with Vince's solo band. And I guess Vince stumbles out there and is hugging Corabi. He said, John Corabi, I love you, man. You're like my brother. And he said, Vince is stumbling, and John's like, well, that's been fun, Vince. I'm going to let you finish the show. So he said he didn't want to be up there and everybody say, oh, look, he's still in Vince's solo band. So John left, and
shit.
but he said to this day that usually when he sees Vince Neil, he's the nicest one of them to him.
Huh.
At one point, Tracy Guns had started a band with Nikki after Motley Crue had broke up, and they wanted John to be in that band, and he was in it for a short time. But long story short, he finally finds his calling with a band that's the guitar player is from Australia, and he's got a lot of money. The band is called the Dead Daisies. So John would eventually join them and tour the world everywhere, large festivals, just playing in front of huge crowds. And just
they're good too. I like them.
They fit him a lot better than Motley ever would have.
Exactly.
And when I guess
they're more like a blues rock type band too.
Yeah, he wanted to take a little bit of a break and go play some gigs with his son, who was a drummer. So he told the Dead Daisies, I kind of want to take a break for about a year from this. So they're like, oh, that's fine, man. We're going to go get Glenn Hughes and do some shit. So Glenn Hughes ended up joining in for an album or so. And then now John's back with the Dead Daisies. They're working on a new album, and I look forward to it. So the end of the day, you got Motley Crue, who retired very well. The retirement tour was great. They did it right. They signed the contract in blood. They weren't going to tour ever again. They were ever done. Nikki really hated the way Kiss lied to the fans. He made it known. He says, you can't do that to the fans. If you're going to retire, you need to retire. So, he was doing 6 a.m. I thought it was a great band, 6 a.m. I loved it.
Yep.
But then at the end of the day, they came back. Now we don't have Mick Mars in the band. Vince can't sing, as we all know. And they're still stumbling around, whereas John's touring the world with the Dead Daisies, voice as pristine as ever.
Yeah.
So 30 years later, I say John Corabi, he might not have all the money in the world, but I think he ended up happier.
Yep, for sure. For sure.
And he just last year put out his autobiography he's been working on for a long time, called Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. So it's a good book. It gets into everything. I managed to get John to sign it, and the guy who co-wrote it with him. So John always puts a peace symbol on his signatures, I've noticed. Then we'll
He's a hippie. He's an old hippie, man.
He's an old hippie. And I do have to show my copy of The Dirt, which is a great book. The movie sucked. I got everybody to sign it. And
That's
John
awesome.
belongs in that book just as much as the other four because he played a huge role in that band. And by God, I want
Didn't you when you took it to go get it signed? Didn't you say he didn't he say I'll sign it up, I'll sign it under fucking Nicky's name
just to
so
piss him off. Yeah, Nicky was,
like
the
you'll ever
one.
like Nicky will ever see it.
I told him that. Nicky was the one that wanted him in the band, but it seemed like Nicky's the one that shunned him the most over the years. Nicky did like a interview and said, "Yeah, that album with Corabi's pure shit. It sucks, and we should have never made it. I hate that album." And everybody's like, "Huh?" Nicky used to brag about how that was his crowning achievement. So I don't know what Nicky's deal is with Corabi now. Maybe he's jealous that he didn't keep
Maybe.
him. But yeah, Nicky's sort of he's not Nicky Six anymore. He's like lost his mind over the last 7 years.
Huh.
He's a really weird dude. But there's not been very many bands that have replaced their lead singers. Black Sabbath managed to do it. AC/DC did it. And they did it around the same time. It was like the late 70s and early 80s. And they did it with at least Dio, a established artist. I don't know about Brian Johnson.
He was in some little band,
Yeah, but he was
pub
on the
band.
radar, on the AC/DC radar the whole time.
Yeah.
Van Halen replaced David Lee Roth clearly just strictly on the fact that they got Sammy Hagar, who was just as known as they were. And a lot of people didn't like that change, but it worked. They sold records.
Yeah. I like
So
Sam Hagar.
there's not a lot of bands that have successfully changed lead singers. It did not happen with the Crue either. When I saw Corabi at that show a few years ago, he was telling a lot of stories at it. And it was around the time that I think the Vince thing came out, that video that was so terrible. And he said, "I'll talk about the video. Yes, I've seen it." He said, "And no," he said, "I will not go back." He said, "There under no circumstance, under no amount of money would he ever rejoin Motley Crue." He said, "People, I'm done with that part of my life, and that's the end. I would never go back to Motley Crue."
I
So
don't
John
blame him.
Corabi, Nicky used to be sort of a hero to me, but now it's Corabi. That's why I named my vampire after him. John Corabi is definitely actually one of my musical heroes. And 30 years later, I'm very proud of the dude and glad that I got to hang out with him and, talk to him. And that 1994 album, 30 years later, we still talk about. We don't talk about New Tattoo. We don't talk about Generation Swine. We certainly don't talk about Vince's 2 solo albums. I can't even remember the name of the second one. But that one album with Corabi is still remembered to this dang day. So all praises to John Corabi for an excellent 30 years and for being a stand-up dude. And that's all I got to say.
All right. The album does hold up for sure.
Holds up well.
I was
You want to
pleasantly
compare, try
surprised.
listening to New Tattoo one night. Oh, Lord. Generation Swine is sort of one of those albums that I'd like, and I don't know why, but I actually like the album.
Huh.
Maybe it's because Corabi helped write it. They
What
made
was
Vincent's
what was
voice.
the single off of that one?
I forget offhand. See, that's how you don't even remember. You remember the Corabi album,
Yeah.
Afraid.
Huh?
It was Afraid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the Afraid was the lead single in the video. Vince had red hair at the time too. He came back with red hair.
Oh, Jesus. See, I don't even remember that shit. What year was that? 97, 98 when that came
97,
out?
I think so, yeah. I remember that. Now that's the one that got all the publicity. There were billboards all over the place for that album. But Nikki claimed Elektra Records didn't push that one, and that's why it failed. But I remember seeing billboards all over the Dallas-Fort Worth area with the album cover. And it's like, Motley Crue is back. They were trying to promote it like, they never made an album with Corabi, that they were
No, and
always.
that's bullshit too, because John Corabi's so way more talented than fucking Vince Neil.
Yeah, but you go
Sure.
tell that to all these 90 or these 80s babies, that wanted their Motley Crue back.
Well, I'm an 80s baby too, but I'm willing to I like change, I
I
like the
mean, I'm the
direction.
same person that think Warrant's a better band than they were with Janie Lane, I've always sort of embraced lead singer changes. Me and Video Bob used to argue about that a lot. There's a lot of bands that change lead singers that I don't have a problem with. Anthrax,
Priest.
John Bush was in the band. I thought that was good stuff. Probably better that Joey Belladonno's back now, but at the time I didn't realize how great Joey was till he came back. So yeah, that was another. Anthrax was on Elektra Records and they fired their lead singer.
Yeah.
So Elektra had some issues. That's part of what flunked this whole thing. So oh well. You live
Oh
and die by the
well.
labels in those day and ages. Now the labels don't mean shit.
Nope. Everybody's putting out their own shit now, man.
Well, Dead Daisies will be
Well,
on.
it's sort of good though that they're doing that, because the record companies fucked a lot of bands,
Well,
man.
you don't think streaming is doing the same thing? It is.
Well, yeah, but
Worse.
still.
It don't matter anyway at this stage. I mean, Motley Crue ain't ever gonna put out another album. It ain't gonna happen.
No.
They're gonna go tour with John 5 until they just
You
quit
know, I
selling
like
tickets.
John 5, but I don't see.
You know what we need to look at next? Mick Mars' solo album that's out.
Yeah, yeah. It's good. I've heard a couple songs of it. It's
It's
really
very
good.
good. It's might be my favorite release of the year so far.
Yeah, it's really good. It's fucking dark as shit too.
Originally he actually wrote an album with Corabi and it just never materialized. So John was going to be Mick's lead singer on his solo album, and that was like 10, 15 years ago. Mick's been writing that thing for years.
It's fucking good from what I've heard, the few songs I've heard off of it.
Mick says
For
he's going to
sure.
play till he can't move.
I don't blame him, man.
I'll never forgive Nicky.
He's a great guitarist,
Of all
man.
the shit Nicky's done, firing Mick Mars has got to be the absolute just most cruel act that an individual could do.
I know, man. That's cold
Just
shit.
pure cruelty. As bad as they might have treated Corabi at the end, this was the worst. I don't think Tommy cares. I think he's just there to make the money. I don't think he cares anymore.
Yeah.
It was always Nikki Sixx's band. I will never deny that.
Yeah.
And guess what? Tommy had quit and came back. Mick is now fired. Vince was fired or quit and came back. Nikki is now the only one that's been in that band since its inception. So it's his band. He can do what the shit he wants. I will not support Nikki Sixx again. I'll wear this shirt because I actually met Motley Crue in this shirt and hung out with them. It was on the reunion tour that they did after they had broke up again, and they got Tommy back. I've talked about that story before, so I'll keep this shirt because it's cool. It's from the girls era. But I will never support Nikki Sixx again. So, to you, Nikki, if you're listening to this, you suck.
Yeah.
I gave all your shirts away. I took all your posters down, Nikki.
They're just going for the fucking money grab
I put
right
Gene
now,
and
man.
Paul in your place. I'm sure that'll really make you happy. Yeah. I used to have a huge collection of Motley Crue stuff, but I really have pretty much just dwindled it down to nothing. Just don't care anymore, man,
Well, there's nothing going to be to fruition of them anymore.
No.
So
After they did, I mean, I was at that last tour and I enjoyed the heck out of it. And people can say that Vince never could sing. I've seen Vince sing very well on a lot of tours. I've seen him sound very poor on a lot of tours. So Vince has not always been what he is now. He used to be better, but he's no John Corabi.
Well, you get old, and when you've abused yourself too over 40 fucking years.
Well, that's
you
the
know,
one I talk about, Don Dawkin. Don's like, I can't sing like I did. He says, you can't hit the notes. He said, in my arm, he said, my right arm is basically crippled. I can't play guitar anymore. He said, but I put out this last Dawkin album, and it is what it is. He says, if it's not the 80s, but I did the best I can, and I'm telling you ahead of time, I don't sound like I used to. So,
well, at
if you
least
want to hear it,
he's
he
admitted it
admits it.
though.
He said, yeah, if you want to hear it, give it a listen. If not, don't come. He said, don't come to the shows. He said, I'm doing what I love. And, I'm sorry that I don't sound the way. And I think I've heard Bon Jovi recently comment on his vocal issues.
Yeah. Well, they're
And
all
John,
old, man. They're all pushing
everybody but Alfred
70, man.
and Bruce Dickinson.
Shit.
They can and Corabi. That dude still sounds great.
Halford, I think he just turned 75 or 76.
Yeah.
All of our heroes are getting old, and they're soon not going to be here. I don't blame them for trying to go out and get that one last shot of glory,
Including Vince.
Well, I don't even think he's even fucking trying, dude.
Mickey and Tommy used to make him try, and now I don't think they care. I don't know why I don't know why he didn't keep 6 a.m. together and let Tommy go do his DJ thing that he enjoys. I don't know what their thinking is. I don't pay any attention to him anymore. Motley Crue is off my radar for the remainder of time.
Well, I heard Def Leppard was bitching about Motley Crue, that how fucking fucked up that whole fucking tour was.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck.
I guess we'll put an end to this now. I think we're rambling at this stage.
Rambling.
We should have stopped about 15 minutes ago. So that's it.
All right. We're about an hour and a half in. So
yeah, we should have cut it off 15 minutes ago.
We're good. All right. That's all we got for Motley Crue 1994. And check us out on all the social medias. We're going to be doing a couple of giveaways here the next week or so. So stay tuned. We got a giveaway,
and we got somebody want to say hi. Come here.
Who wants to say hi?
Come here.
Is it a kitty cat?
Come here.
Here, kitty, 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 kitty.
Come here, kitty, kitty.
Who is it? But anyway, yeah, we're going to be doing a giveaway. Some giveaways. I think we're going to do 3 in we're going to do one every week for like the next 3 weeks. So, but we got to figure out what we're going to do to give out these prizes. So, oh, look at that. Is she tired?
You tired? You want to say good night? Say it.
It's little Scarlet.
Say good night to everybody. Night. Tell them John Corabi rules. Nuh-uh. Okay, well, I'm going to go hang out with her.
All right, everybody. Check us out on all social medias. Hit that like and subscribe on the YouTube. Thank you for watching and listening. And I'll talk to you Wednesday. And
I might.
You might join me for something. Who knows?
I might do Generation Swine. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Do it. All right. Thanks, everybody. Love ya and stay evil. Storm lines of hell on a face. Red apples crawling through the night.
Life's passed him by. Little old woman scared and blind, left alone in desperate times. Life's passed her by. Oh, life is misunderstood them, so they close their eyes and dream of better days. Oh, life is misunderstood.